Hey YouTube, Mr. Terry, welcome back to another History Teach Reacts video. All right, we're staying on the topic of the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. And when I logged in today, I saw that LegalEagle did a video that's titled Huge Legal Issues of Trump's Assassination. So I was wondering about this. It's like, all right, the shooter's dead. What are they going to do? Charge him with a crime now? But I do wonder about issues surrounding, say, the Secret Service, the police. How about the other people that died and were injured in that shooting? So throughout the video, I'll give you more of my thoughts about the assassination, what the effects are, and get you to add more historical context because this is not a first-time thing in American history. All right, original video is down below. Let's check this out and let's talk. All right, so I saw the title of this video again was Huge Legal Issues of Trump's Assassination, and I saw this asterisk right here, and I was like, what does that mean? And the asterisk was attempted assassination. I wonder why they put that there and didn't just like change the title. I don't know, but all right, let's go ahead and check out what the LegalEagle crew has got for us. What are the legal issues surrounding this?
Yeah, it's illegal to try to kill a candidate for president. Good night, everyone. Okay, all right. But what happened to Donald Trump and the people at his rally was disturbing and wrong. I think I speak for the vast majority of Americans in expressing that they are glad he was not assassinated. And to the people who died and were injured, they have my deepest condolences.
So they are finding out more about who else was killed. So it says thousands gather at banquet hall to celebrate life of former fire chief killed at the Trump rally. And that thing, you know how a lot of people are saying right now, it's like divine intervention that, you know, Trump wasn't killed, but like, then you add that like somebody was killed. Like that seems so kind of like strange to me, unless totally like ranking people's lives and it's okay for this one person to die, for this person to live, when, you know, you would hope none of this had to happen. But yeah, I think forget how these other people get affected by this.
Such acts are the antithesis of our democratic system. And I'm sorry that Donald Trump was shot with a gun. Really seems like we should be able to put some common sense
he's not a fan. That's something I've noticed.
Weapons. And hey, I'm just going to say something really controversial.
Right?
Whether it's a candidate for president or a school full of children, people should not shoot them with guns. Now, at this juncture, the FBI has still not pinned down the motive for why Thomas Crooks tried to assassinate Trump at his Pennsylvania rally last Saturday afternoon.
Now, when you guys see this, I think it will have been a week. If this is on Saturday, when I release this, will be in a full week. And, you know, every day a little bit of news trickles out about this. And you're finding a little bit more about the kid. I saw that interview with like a kid that was a classmate of his that says he was, you know, very outspoken on political issues. And he liked to kind of play what do you call that? Like contrarian. You know, people are like that. There's a lot of people that they will insert themselves on the opposite side of any argument they hear, just for the sake of it being on the opposite side. They have said a little bit more about his like family's beliefs, like his dad, apparently big Trump supporter. So some people are wondering if, you know, he was trying to like spite his father out of this situation, and it might have been a little bit more divisive in the home about political opinions. But again, the kid was what, 20? And so, you know,
afternoon, killing one person and injuring three more.
It's not a lot of time for
Trump.
political
This act of violence
radicalization.
raises a host of legal questions. What crimes would he have been charged with if he lived? Could his parents face liability? Could there be liability for the security failures? And is there liability for the heated rhetoric leading up to the assassination attempt? But here are the facts as we know them at the time of this filming. 20-year-old Republican Thomas Matthew Crooks climbed up onto a rooftop 150 yards from the stage where Donald Trump was holding a campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. He fired an AR-style .556 caliber semi-automatic rifle towards the stage, killing 50-year-old fireman Corey Comparatore, wounding two others and striking Trump in the right ear. Crooks allegedly fired as many as 8 rounds before a Secret Service sniper shot Crooks dead. Reports say that Crooks purchased 50 rounds of ammunition.
By the way, did you hear the kid that was his classmate? Like, he hated him. He really hated him. But then they said the kid, you know, the kid that was doing the interview, he was in, I think maybe junior high with him, maybe. I got to look at that again because it said like he also left, you know, he also left that school, the interviewer, not the main kid here. But yeah, then there was the thing about him like donating to, I think it was the DNC, but I also heard that people were also saying that it was somebody else with like a different name. But you know, that he had these different opinions and was back and forth. I don't know whether it was politically confused or, again, like we said earlier, like spiting your dad. There are so many different things that lead to this type of behavior. I mean, we were talking about how like the attempted assassinations of Teddy Roosevelt and Ronald Reagan, and how bizarre the backstories were for that. Like the one guy was attempting to assassinate Roosevelt said he was visited by the ghost of McKinley, who, you know, he had taken over for. Teddy Roosevelt had taken over for because he was assassinated. But then you had the guy that went after Reagan, who was trying to impress a teenage actress, and Jodie Foster, and like that would somehow make some connection. Like it's so weird because you have these people that again have these like delusions, and there's like those people that are just radicalized or something, or they're, you know, very much into political theory, or whether there's some like revolutionary cause, someone that might be able to articulate stuff and has been radicalized through theory and things like that. Then there's just like people that have delusions, and they're all a weird story.
On the day of the shooting, and investigators later found 2 improvised explosive devices in his car and another in his home.
Gun was his
profile
dad's,
seems to be
right?
similar to other shooters in his age range in that he was troubled, interested in firearms, and struggling to figure out what to do with his life. He was asked to leave the high school gun club because he was a poor shot. He wore hunting gear and camouflage to school. He leave the high school gun club because he was a poor shot. He wore hunting gear and camouflage to school, and some students bullied him for it.
Okay, so this is stuff I didn't know. So he didn't just not make the shooting because he was one for the shooting team. He was asked not to come back because of bad of a shot he was. It was considered like dangerous. Wonder where that came from. So he was actually bad with the gun.
One classmate told the New York Times that, quote, those other kids would always say, hey, look at the school shooter over there. They would tease him about his poor hygiene, his body odor. He was an easy target. 2 months before the shooting, Crooks earned an associate's degree in engineering science from Allegheny County Community College, and although the University of Pittsburgh had accepted him, Crooks decided not to attend school. Like many other school shooters.
Okay, so I did hear that he's like a STEM kid, which again is so different because, you know, the STEM people, say like someone going down into that's more into like political science, can often be very different. The STEM people, very analytical. They can be very apolitical with that because they just want to see things as this cut and dry world, right? When it comes to things like, you know, they like math, and the reason they like math is because it is like foolproof. It's like here's the equation, and here's the answer. That can be the only answer. It's not going to be debatable. Then you have these open-ended philosophy type of things where you make these moral arguments, and that's like a different thought process for a lot. That's your debate lords and all that. So it again makes it almost less likely that he would be the person to do what he does if it was based truly on like political inclinations.
He was described as a loner. In other ways, Crooks differs from other mass shooters. He apparently left virtually no online footprint. And although Crooks was a registered Republican, he was too young to vote in the 2020 election. His father was registered as a libertarian, and that
was weird too. And that interview with that classmate was weird because it was said that they would like get into these arguments about like the 2012 election, and he was 8 or that, or 20, no, it would have been 2008. I think it was like, he was going to be like 8 years old then, or not 8 years old, but like 12 years old then. And it like, okay, like, what is this kid talking about? He was debating that, you know, with at that age. But the idea that you have a political assassin that has not made a footprint on social media is super weird, because those guys, they write manifestos. They're on message boards. I think maybe he was on like Discord, and, you know, everyone's on Discord for like gaming or something, but they're on Reddit, 4chan, again, all the social medias. They want to be seen. They want to be heard. There's a narcissism usually that comes from those people, which is another, again, odd thing. They didn't have that digital footprint.
His mother, a Democrat. The younger Crooks had a job as a dietary aide at a nursing home and was a member of the local gun club. And there's some evidence that he was researching the DNC and other prominent politicians, both Republicans and Democrats, and it's possible he just wanted to kill a politician and that the Trump rally just happened to be closer to his home. But at the moment, we don't know. Now, after the shooting, the FBI immediately took over the case.
That makes total legitimate sense that way, looking that he doesn't seem like he was this, again, politically charged, you know, kid, that he just wanted to make an impact that way.
police. A spokesman said that they were investigating the shooting as a potential domestic terrorism act, and as of right now, the FBI believes that Crooks acted alone and that there are currently no public safety concerns. At present, we have not identified an ideology associated with the subject, but I want to remind everyone that we're still very early in this investigation. So if Crooks had survived, what would he have been charged with? Well, to start with murder and attempted murder for killing one person and wounding 3 others. But there would have been other criminal charges as well. Generally, those are state crimes, and there's no doubt that Crooks would have been charged with attempted first-degree murder. In Pennsylvania, that is a criminal homicide that constitutes murder of the first degree when it is committed by an intentional killing. There seems little doubt that he tried to intentionally kill Donald Trump, but was unsuccessful. And during the course of his attempted murder in the first degree, he ended up killing a bystander. Now, that would have made him liable for murder in the second degree, because murder in the second degree under Pennsylvania law is their felony murder rule. In the course of committing the felony of attempted murder in the first degree, he wound up killing a second person, which would have made him liable for murder in the second degree. Yeah. But given the high-profile nature of things and the fact that the target
I saw those people at the RNC, like the people that were there, like the spectators, and like the thing is, you wear a patch over your right ear now. Somebody was making fun of them. They're like, "Oh, you guys wouldn't wear a mask because you thought it looked stupid, but now you're wearing this."
The presidential candidate, I'm sure the feds certainly would have wanted to crack at it too. Now, the presidential assassination statute, yes, there actually is one, 18 U.S.C. 1751, makes it a federal offense for anyone to assault, kill, or kidnap, or attempt to conspire to kill or kidnap the president and vice president of the United States, among others. But since according to...
I was wondering if somehow you get harsher charges if it is a politician, and obviously a high-ranking politician, like a former president / presidential candidate, or is it the same thing as if there was a murder of a random person? Well, I shouldn't say random because it's first degree. And first degree, I believe, usually means it was premeditated. But
people, Donald Trump is not the current president of the United States. He is only a former president. He'd be covered by a different statute. 18 U.S.C. 879 prohibits knowing and willful threats to kill, kidnap, or inflict bodily harm against the following categories of persons who are protected by the United States Secret Service. 1, a former president or a member of the immediate family of a former president. And 3, a major candidate for the office of president or vice president or a member of the immediate family of such candidate. Now, the Justice Department manual summarizes that, quote, the purpose of the statute is to prohibit threats against former presidents and other Secret Service protectees not covered by the presidential threat statute. This gives the Secret Service the legal basis for investigating and prosecuting threats against all categories of persons authorized to be protected under the law.
Story time. You guys ready for story time? Check this out. So I'm in junior high. I forget which grade. My junior high was a 7th, 8th, 9th grade. I can't remember if it was 8th or 9th. And I'm at school. And I go home for the day. My parents are like, "Hey, did you know that we got called down to the school today?" And of course, I'm like, "Oh, crap. Like, did I do something wrong?" Like, Junior, I acted out a little bit sometimes, but like nothing real bad. I mean, maybe at worst, a teacher might have called and said, "Hey, Andrew's kind of, he was kind of, off task today, maybe distracting others." Okay, whatever. But like, they were like, "Yeah, we got called to come down, and there was the Secret Service was there," or I don't know if they were there or they were involved in this. And my parents said, they came down and said, "Hey, your son made a threat on the president." That was junior high. This would have been Clinton. Okay. And my parents did the parent thing, which was like, "What? My kid would never do that. Like, that's really weird." And they're like, "Nope, we have it. No, we have it." And I think, I forget, it was my mom or my dad was like, let's look at what is this evidence there. And they show that there was an email sent from the school computer, something really dumb and whatever, some kind of vague threat on again, President Clinton. Obviously a very juvenile thing, but Secret Service, law enforcement, they take that stuff very, very serious. And they said, and my dad said, look at this name from the sender. This name, yes, it says Terry, but that is not my son's first name. And they're like, "Wait, what?" And it's like, "Yeah, pull out a yearbook." And so they pulled out a yearbook, my dad said, and said, "Yeah, there's two kids with the last name Terry in this in this class." And they're like, "Oh, okay, sorry." And so they thought it was me that gave a threat, but it was a different person, someone with a different last name. But that was the weirdest thing. I guess that's the closest thing I ever came to being involved with the crosshairs of the Secret Service or something like that. That kid ended up getting suspended from school for a while, but yeah, that was weird. The weird thing is they never called me down ever. They called my parents down, but they never called me down. I did not know about it until I went home that day. I thought that was always weird, but yeah, anyway.
Well, interestingly, the law that's referenced there, 18 U.S.C. 871, doesn't actually cover candidates for presidency, only presidents-elect. And while there is a federal murder statute, 18 U.S.C. 1111, that only applies when the act takes place in a place where the federal government has jurisdiction, which probably would not be the case in a state venue. But that probably wouldn't have been too much of an impediment here because Crooks carried a transmitter that was wired to an improvised explosive device hidden in the trunk of his car. And so far, authorities are stumped on how he obtained the explosive materials. His internet search history.
So I want to know about that because there was explosives in there. If it was, do we know if it was actually like hooked up and armed and like could have actually detonated if he had, pressed it?
Shows no evidence that he searched for information on how to build bombs. But the man who bombed the Boston Marathon was charged and convicted of using a weapon of mass destruction under 18 U.S.C. 2332. So it's likely federal prosecutors would have charged a similar crime in this case had Crooks lived.
Thankful that
now, if you try to assassinate a presidential candidate, you'll want a good lawyer. But if you want a great lawyer, my law firm, the Eagle Team, can help. If you've been injured in a truck accident,
would you guys hire them?
Especially if they said your social security number was leaked, or just about anything else, we can represent you or help find you the right attorney who can. So just call the number that's on screen or click on the link in the description for free consultation. Would you guys hire them?
What kind of case would you want?
Because you understand the legal team, you need the Eagle Team.
Defend you on.
Now, speaking of security lapses, what in the world happened?
I guess I could have hired them if they were around when the Secret Service thought I was making threats to the president.
Here. Well, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas called the shooting a security failure, and that seems like an understatement. Now, the Secret Service takes the lead in providing security to a candidate for president, but in this instance, they were assisted by at least a dozen police officers and sheriff's deputies, in addition to troopers from the Pennsylvania State Police. Now, it's not unusual for the Secret Service to coordinate with law enforcement. In fact, we expect them to do so. But the most glaring security feature here was not securing the rooftop that Crooks used to fire his shots. Now, the building belongs to AGR International, a company that sells industrial equipment, and the parking lot for the site was closed to the public on the day of the rally, but law enforcement had access to it and to the interior. And although attendees had to pass through metal—
Yeah, weren't they using it? I thought I heard something about that, but the issue is it was not very far from the stage. Wasn't it only like a couple 100 yards, 200, maybe 300 tops, which for somebody that can aim a long distance, gun with a scope is a shot you can make. But yeah, it was really close for something that somebody could get there and like be able to climb up on and be there without, without being sighted. Cause we probably saw like the CIA guys, or not CIA guys, the Secret Service guys that were like on the roofs, and they have sniper rifles and they have spotters and things like that, but it was so close, incredibly close. It's amazing that somebody could be that close with that kind of vantage point.
Detectors to get to the main venue. This building was considered to be outside of the security perimeter. Now, we don't know how Crooks got there, but the aerial footage of the event shows a ladder propped up on the side of the building, and two sources told CBS News that Crooks purchased a ladder from Home Depot before the rally. Now, the Secret Service apparently delegated the security of that building to local police. People at the rally told law enforcement that there was a man with a gun on the roof, and according to a cell phone video made by one of the attendees, police knew that Crooks was on top of the roof for at least 86 seconds before he opened fire.
I did hear that. That was wild that, somebody, they were telling police, like, there's somebody on that roof there. Like, what is that? Like, they had actually told police and people could see it and see him.
Officer, people in our country that shouldn't be here.
That's insane.
Criminals. We have criminals. We have
Now, the Butler Township Police may have been responsible for securing that building. Butler County Sheriff Michael T. Sloop told the Washington Post that, quote, that one local police officer did confront Crooks before the shooting. It was not immediately clear whether that officer was the one seen examining the building in the newly surfaced video footage. The officer hoisted himself up on the roof to check on reports of a suspicious man, Sloop said, but the officer, who was not able to access a gun because he was gripping the edge of the roof, had to drop down when the shooter aimed his weapon at him, the sheriff said.
What?
He lets go because he doesn't want to get killed, Sloop
part.
said. The shooter then began firing at the rally site. And according to local law enforcement, quote, a sniper from a local tactical team.
Okay, so they were like closing in on him. I mean, they were getting a little bit closer, having trouble maybe getting to him. But now remember, it happened pretty quickly into his speech, wasn't it? Like it was within the first 10 minutes.
Deployed to assist the U.S. Secret Service at the rally, took a picture of the gunman and saw him looking through a rangefinder minutes before he opened fire. And according to a local news outlet, there was a sniper who was one of three members of a local tactical team stationed inside the building. The operations plan, which presumably was approved in conjunction with the Secret Service, stationed the snipers inside the building where they looked out the windows toward the crowd. And this CBS News map of the scene also shows trees that may have obstructed their view.
Hold on, Trump on site. So yeah, that's close. That's really close for a scoped rifle there. Okay, tree possibly blocking Secret Service snipers. Okay, that kind of makes sense. Because I did see the video of them on that slanted barn. And there was the Secret Service sniper. And then I think somebody had, there was a spotter with binoculars. So gunman up there. Secret Service snipers reported to have killed him. So there was another set over there. Okay. But yeah, that's so close. What if they thought at first, if they saw somebody up there, they're like, hey, it's just some like Trump fan he couldn't get into the event. So he's like climbing up, trying to get a view, like somebody that climbs up in a building across from a baseball field because they don't have tickets. But I guess once you can see that they have, the weapon, did he have a bag or something he concealed it with? I mean, I've seen like the final shots of him and you can see the gun, but it wasn't concealed at all, even though it was a big rifle.
But it looks bad that cops didn't spot Crooks on the roof and attendees saw him first. Now, if we assume that all of that is true, do these local cops and the departments have legal culpability? Yeah, that's not how any of this works. Under a case called Deschaney versus
they might get fired,
Department
but I
of
bet
Social Services
else.
And Town of Castle Rock, Colorado versus Gonzalez, law enforcement officers have a duty to the public, but not to individual citizens. This is known as the public duty doctrine. And the doctrine means that officers don't have a duty to protect citizens from harm from a third party. In other words, there is no clear duty to protect. In this case, that probably makes extra sense because the Trump campaign has a history of using outdoor insecure venues where they don't have to pay venue fees rather than much more secure arenas where the security can be controlled. And apparently they've been warned many times about this risk. But what about the shooter's parents? Crooks' parents are licensed professional social workers. The father,
if I remember right, when they have these like people that have done like school shootings and things like that, the parents never get in trouble. They never get in trouble with that, even if they used, like their weapon, or even if they're like underage or something like nothing ever seems to happen to that, which I think is something to debate about, that there should be some culpability about the irresponsibility of, these weapons that don't belong to others, and you don't keep them secured or whatever. But I mean, that kid he was an adult. He can get his own guns. He bought his own ammo. So the parents, there's nothing that can happen to them here, especially because he's a full adult. He's not a minor. He's not under their supervision. So I can't imagine that unless they did something illegal, like illegally obtained the weapon. I don't know how you could put it to them, but let's see what they say.
Crooks was a member of the Clarion Sportsman Club, and investigators said that in 2013, Matthew bought the rifle used in the shooting. And an email address linked to the father.
And they're both counselors, right?
They're so did the parents have any idea that their son was dangerous? Well, we don't have many facts about their relationship with their son, other than the fact that he was still living at home. A news report said that, quote, after Crooks opened fire, his father called police to say that he was worried that his son and his AR rifle were missing, but generally a person's family members are not responsible for the acts of a person who commits murder. But of course, you may remember that new legal ground was broken in Michigan when the parents of a school shooter were convicted of involuntary manslaughter when they failed to stop their son from killing. And it looks like the shooter was actually worried about what might happen to his parents.
Okay, so if you knew about it and didn't take active measures to stop it, then maybe you can have some culpability. But like, he actually said they called it in, but it was after the shooting. Let me go back to that actually. After Crooks opened fire, his father called police to say he was worried. Okay, so it was after he opened fire that his son and his AR rifle were missing, 3 officials said. But after the fire, I wonder if he didn't know that it had happened yet, or is the dude just trying to like have some plausible deniability.
When fired, his father called police to say that he was worried that his son and his AR rifle were missing, but generally a person's family members are not responsible for the acts of a person who commits murder. But of course, you may remember that new legal ground was broken in Michigan when the parents of a school shooter were convicted of involuntary manslaughter when they failed to stop their son from killing. And it looks like the shooter was actually worried about what might happen to his parents because the FBI says he researched the Crumbly incident before he planned the assassination. The district attorney charged Jennifer and James Crumbly with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, one for each person their son murdered. But that case was unusual because there were a lot of red flags that would have caused most people to immediately seek help. On the day of the shooting, the school called the parents to discuss Ethan's violent drawings, whose captions including "My life is useless," "Blood everywhere,"
this isn't
and "The thoughts won't stop, help me." And the parents also purchased the shooter.
This is depressing, man. I can tell you this, as a teacher, if I see anything like this, I have a job. I actually have a legal responsibility to report stuff like this. I also have I can't be, I have actual legal protections too, that if I was to report this and the parents or someone gets mad and they're like, "You're overreacting, you're making things look bad for my son," or whatever, like I actually have, like a defense for that. Like I'm doing my job. It's part of my job. So like, I can't have a lot of backlash for that, but they have blood everywhere. The thoughts, something stop, help me, my life is useless. Yeah, like this stuff. Yeah, he's got a handgun there. This is stuff I would immediately be reporting. And right now it's pretty good. I mean, schools, I think, are, at least in my experience, have done a pretty good job of, they take those threats seriously. So especially stuff like this, they're going to pull that kid out of class. They're going to call the parents and get the counselors involved, probably grab the school cop, if hopefully your school has one. So yeah, I know as a teacher, this will get reported. And it sounds like that's what had happened here. Let me go back to what they said about this.
That case was unusual because there were a lot of red flags that would have caused most people to immediately seek help. On the day of the shooting, the school called the parents to discuss Ethan's violent drawings, whose captions including "My life is useless," "Blood everywhere," and "The thoughts won't stop, help me." And the parents also purchased the shooter a gun 4 days before the attack, despite their knowledge that their son Ethan had been hearing voices. And eventually a Michigan appeals court ruled that the Crumbleys could be tried for involuntary manslaughter for both their acts and their failures to act. Now, the relevant Pennsylvania law is not quite the same. In Pennsylvania, involuntary manslaughter is defined as a person is guilty of involuntary manslaughter when, as a direct result of the doing of an unlawful act in a reckless or grossly negligent manner, or in doing a lawful act in a reckless or grossly negligent manner, he causes the death of another person. And the Pennsylvania statute uses the term doing, and that term seems to require the person to act rather than punishing them for a failure to act. And it's also important to note that the Crumbly prosecution was rooted in the legal duties that a parent has towards their minor children. Here, the shooter was 20 years old. He was not a minor. So the same principles of a parent controlling their minor child probably wouldn't apply. And the gun that the shooter allegedly used was purchased by the father in 2013. It doesn't seem similar to James Crumbly buying a gun for his 15-year-old who was hearing voices just days before the shooting. And of course, some people are pointing fingers at the Democrats. President Biden is under fire for the unfortunate coincidence of telling major donors that he was going to put Trump in the bullseye.
Oh, gosh, Joe. Read the room, dude. There's just certain things you don't say, man. You gotta be careful. Oh my gosh. I didn't see that part of that interview. Oh my gosh. Now he did that day come out, pretty clearly and said that, it doesn't condone that. And I agreed with what he's saying. It's like, this is bad for a democracy. I, for one, again, thought, of course, it was completely tragic what had happened that day with this assassination attempt and the people that died. It's a bad sign of your country if this kind of stuff happens. And for a little bit more thought of my thought on it, let's say it had actually been successful. That's the kind of stuff that leads people, like if you see that happen, is going to lead people to think that that is an effective way of making like political changes, is to just oust the person, unalive them that way. Like, and that can't be a precedent in this country, because then you'll just see more and more attempts of it. Because if you got their way, I mean, that person got their way, right? And whether they lived or died as the attempted assassin, that person's, no matter what you want, is not going to be running for office. Or if they were in office, they're going to get taken out. It could be seen as successful, but It cannot be normalized. That's the important part. And in some countries, that kind of stuff does happen. In some countries, people have so little faith in their way that they can intervene in their country through voting or whatever it is. They have so little faith in that they view this as the only acceptable method for having political power is to assassinate people. They don't feel like they can make the change. Grassroots politics doesn't work, or they've tried to do the democratic way, but it fails, or they're met with repression. So they go to that. Like, it's a sign of a failed democracy. And when you see this stuff, if it becomes normalized, that's my thoughts on it.
I didn't say crosshairs. I've been bullseye. I mean, focus on him. Focus on what he's doing. Focus on his policies.
Joe's so old.
Just hours before the assassination attempt. And other Democrats are in trouble for using apocalyptic rhetoric about the potential consequences of Trump being elected for a second term. And we've talked a lot about whether a person's speech can give rise to criminal charges, and the short answer is usually not. The First Amendment almost always protects this kind of speech, and even if you read this language as calling for violence or illegality, which seems incorrect, in Brandenburg versus Ohio, the Supreme Court established a two-part test for when the government may criminalize speech advocating for the use of force or crime. To criminalize such speech, the speech must be directed to inciting and producing imminent lawless action, and the speech is likely to incite or produce such action.
Well, and this is why it's been so hard to nail down Trump on like the January 6th stuff, because it comes into that free speech thing. But then you have to demonstrably prove that speech directly led to crimes being broken. And it seems like it's kind of in that middle gray area right now, where there are some arguments for it, but then it's hard to make those arguments stick that hard. And of course, it's very much politicized. It's down, how you view Trump is going to likely determine how responsible he was for the January 6th stuff. So it's very politicized that way.
And all of that is missing here. But it's been hard to determine the shooter's
That's also where we got the immunity case.
He seems to have no online presence.
All right, so if the question was, are there people that are going to be held responsible legally for this attempted assassination? It looks like no. Parents, no. The kid was an adult, and nothing really can connect them. But then even like police, Secret Service, not going to happen now. Doesn't mean people won't like get fired. That's definitely possible. You could have police or Secret Service people get fired. There's a lot of scrutiny. I've seen people who wasn't there like a senator that like ran up to the woman who's the head of the Secret Service and was like grilling her in public and all this. So you could see people like lose their jobs, but jail time, it doesn't look like anybody around this did anything illegal per se. Maybe they didn't fulfill their jobs, but that's a different thing than coming under legal scrutiny. All right. So again, this case has been very interesting. More and more things are coming out as they're finding more about the kid and his ties, the family, what was going on there. So take everything with a grain of salt. Let stuff get confirmed before you go and want to jump to conspiracies or whatever it is that you might be wanting to lean to. There's no rush. There's no rush in forming an opinion. So with that, if you guys want me to cover this stuff, I feel like in a lot of these videos, I am talking about the same historical context for some of those assassinations. And if you haven't seen some of the videos, hopefully that's been new. But like I was telling you about Teddy Roosevelt and Ronald Reagan and kind of background of those assassination stories, I'll keep covering this stuff, but I just want to know if you guys want to see it. So like this video if you like what we're doing here. And with that, we'll see you next time.